This video is sponsored by Surfshark. 2024 has been a rollercoaster year for Star Wars, and we're barely 2 weeks into it. Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy of WEF fame kicked things off by promising her Rey movie would take Star Wars where no woman had taken it before, already on New Year's Eve. 1 week later, a Jon Favreau movie was announced, and the week after that, reports that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's Rey movie might not happen at all started emerging, and now we're hearing nothing but chaos. So, what is going on? We shall see, but make no mistake about it, the future of the Star Wars franchise itself is what is at stake here, and that future is probably in the process of being decided behind the scenes right now as we speak. In this editorial, I will go through all the recent rumors, describe the 2 possible paths Star Wars could take from here on out, what each of those paths lead to, and how to determine which path we are currently on. What is clear though is that if the WEF's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy thought her comments would win fans eager to signal their virtue over to her vision, she was sorely mistaken, because the backlash was swift, worldwide, and brutal. Only Disney themselves have the real numbers, but the circumstantial evidence is that her comments directly led to yet another bout of Disney Plus cancellations, just in time to miss out on Marvel's Echo. If that was you, I hope you resisted the temptation to check it out on the high seas, because not only is piracy wrong, you would be exposing yourself to endless spyware, tracking software and other malware out there on the high seas. And that's on top of all the data that could be stolen from you during all of your regular browsing and sold to third parties. Have you noticed all the spam and scam emails you're getting? Well, they got your email from those third parties, that's how that happens. There's a fix for all of that though. To protect yourself, you need to protect your data, and a good way of doing that is through a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet, thereby protecting your data and you. But there's more. Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which gives some great advantages when it comes to streaming. For instance, you can access 15 different Netflix libraries, all with a different selection of movies and TV series, simply by changing your virtual location. Which is easy, because Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in more than 100 countries around the world. Outside of the US, Star, the international version of Hulu, comes bundled with Disney+. If you're in the US and change your location to, say, the UK, well then you just might get that too. That's pretty good, but it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive special offer of up to 6 months for free. Just head on over to surfshark.deals/midnight to order, link is in the description. Furthermore, Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's get back to what might be going on with Star Wars. With the surprise return of Jon Favreau, I right now see 2 possible paths where Star Wars could flow from this point in time onwards. The first one, and the default one, let's be clear about that, is the Kathleen Kennedy path. This is the one we undeniably were on, and by default still are on, and this is the path that allows Kathleen Kennedy to completely and utterly reshape Star Wars in her image. Case in point, at last year's Star Wars celebration, 3 Star Wars movies were announced. It was James Mangold's movie about the beginnings of the Jedi Order, taking place in the past. It was Dave Filoni's Thrawn movie, which was set to conclude Jon Favreau's Mandoverse and take place in what you might call the present. And finally, it was the WEF's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's Rey Palpatine movie, taking place in the future. That's the past, present, and future of Star Wars all under Kathleen Kennedy's control. The implication being that both the James Mangold and Dave Filoni movies would set up storylines for the Rey movie, thus framing the entirety of Star Wars as always having been about Kathleen Kennedy's self-insert Rey all along, and that the Skywalkers were mere stepping stones on the way to get there. Or, put in other terms, all roads lead to the sequel trilogy. If this path, the default path, is followed, then Star Wars is dead. The sequel trilogy killed the Star Wars franchise as a multi-generational brand with wide international appeal. Oh, they can continue the franchise with Rey Palpatine and her further adventures alright, but they better cut the budgets pretty drastically if they do, because her movies will do the Marvel's numbers at best. Star Wars would be permanently reduced to a mid-tier sci-fi brand with an ever-shrinking fanbase. As even Disney's own analysts pointed out, according to an earlier WDW Pro report we have previously covered, any Rey movie is a net negative, meaning no benefit can come from making it. Even so, until otherwise is proven, that is the path that Disney, in their virtue-signaling wisdom, chose. What throws a possible wrench in that though is the surprise reveal of Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian and Grogu movie. By all outwardly appearances, it would appear that Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian and Grogu movie in reality is The Mandalorian Season 4, or at the very least a big chunk of it, now repurposed as a movie. Meaning, instead of getting another full season of The Mandalorian, we'd be getting this movie which would presumably conclude the Mandalorian and Grogu storyline, or at the very least, the Mandalorians. That Park Place has previously reported on rumors that Lucasfilm wants to bring back Grogu for the Rey movie, and they and WDW Pro are now also reporting that Dave Filoni could be involved with writing even this movie, as it ties in with Filoni's own Thrawn movie, and maybe even a third movie based on his animated drivel. If accurate, that would make for a trilogy of sorts, one which would require the viewer to have done a lot of homework in order to understand anything about what's going on. But here's the thing though, if all else is equal, then Favreau coming back for this one movie, if that is all, doesn't really change anything. Favreau's movie was first announced to the world in a blog post on StarWars.com, but this same blog post also assured that while Favreau's movie may be the one prioritized and even rushed through release, all the other movies are still coming as well. Meaning, after Favreau's movie presumably rounds out the Mandalorian storyline, then James Mangold's movie will still rewrite the past of Star Wars in Kathleen Kennedy's image, Dave Filoni will still muck up Thrawn, now without the added burden of having to deal with Mando and Grogu as Favreau would have done that for him already, while the WEF's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy presumably would still make the future of Star Wars in Kathleen Kennedy's image, where Rey rules and you will own nothing and be happy. In other words, by default, we're still on the Kathleen Kennedy branch, which still ends with the death of Star Wars, only Jon Favreau gets to have some level of closure in the process. But there is a hypothetical scenario here, where the Favreau movie isn't just a point of closure, but a point of divergence, possibly leading to a different path for Star Wars. By all outwardly appearances, Jon Favreau was more or less out of Star Wars by the time of Star Wars Celebration last year, by which time he had already filmed his own death scene for The Mandalorian Season 3, and Kathleen Kennedy couldn't shut up about how important her acolyte Dave Filoni was for the future of Star Wars.
I think people are really excited for Dave Filoni.
And we sat down and talked with Dave about it. You know what we're seeing, and Dave talked a lot about this. Obviously, Jon and Dave, I wouldn't do it without Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave created so much of what was in Clone Wars and Rebels, and well, that's really building toward what Dave's doing in the future space. Certainly looking at what Dave's been doing with Ahsoka, he's, what's great about Jim is he's a writer-director, much like Dave is. So that Dave is very influenced by Kurosawa and Japanese films. Dave's.
Indeed, before long, Dave Filoni was made the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm, something by rights Jon Favreau should have been, as he is the only one in Disney's entire stable up for the job. Yet outwardly, he was nowhere in sight. But then, Season 1 of Ahsoka happened, and it flopped in the ratings, even worse than did Andor, which famously had to chase the audience. Not a great start for Lucasfilm's new creative director. Meanwhile, on the big screen, Kathleen Kennedy's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny lost Disney upwards of $300 million at the box office. That's the last thing that Bob Iger, already under pressure from Nelson Peltz, needed. That opens the door to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, things aren't equal. Considering that the only real hit Star Wars has had these past few years is the 2 first seasons of The Mandalorian where Favreau ran the show, and you can see an at the very least hypothetical scenario where Bob Iger might think now might be a good time to give Favreau more influence over what happens in the world of Star Wars, maybe even beyond this one movie. To be clear, this is just me giving the most optimistic read of the situation that I can. I am not claiming that Favreau has any influence beyond his Mandalorian and Grogu movie. There is as of yet no outwardly evidence to confirm that he has any influence beyond his Mandalorian and Grogu movie. But there are some who are of the opinion that behind closed doors, Favreau has just that. And all things considered, that possibility cannot conclusively be ruled out. And if Favreau should have more influence going forward, there is at the very least a chance he might be able to bring Star Wars back from the brink. Otherwise, there is none. So let's entertain the notion that there is a path for Star Wars where Favreau may have been given more influence over Star Wars than this one Mandalorian and Grogu movie, even though Kathleen Kennedy and her nearly all-female story group remains in the building, and clearly have a different vision for Star Wars than Favreau does. What would such a path look like, and how would we know if we're on it? Well, if indeed this Favreau path exists outside of the hypothetical realm, and we are on it, we should expect that Kennedy's upcoming Star Wars movies, most notably her Rey movie, do what nearly all other of Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars movies tend to do, which is to experience production trouble, talent exiting, being pushed back, and here's the big one, eventually being forgotten all about. On January 15th, 1 week after Favreau's The Mandalorian and Grogu movie was announced, and 2 weeks after the WEF's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy said all that good shit about how it was high time a woman exert some influence over Star Wars. Something that many, by the way, including our good friend Chris Gore of Film Threat fame, opined indicated a movie in trouble. World of Real reported that the upcoming Rey Star Wars movie had been delayed indefinitely, with Jordan Rumley writing, "I've been told that Disney has delayed the film indefinitely, which is why they surprised everyone last week and decided to announce The Mandalorian and Grogu as the next Star Wars movie. They just don't have the confidence that the new Jedi Order will be happening in the near future." The problems seem to reside in creative differences between screenwriter Stephen Knight and Lucasfilm. Jordan is told that a draft had originally been written for the film, but Lucasfilm gave him so many notes that he had to start from scratch. To make matters worse, there is the possibility that Knight may not be staying on board the project. His frustrations have grown, so he's put Star Wars on the back burner and is now focused on the screenplay for his Peaky Blinders movie, which is supposed to go into production in the fall. These issues with Knight come only 2 years after development of the film started, and various drafts had circulating with different writers including Damon Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson, both eventually exiting this Rey Palpatine movie. Knight came aboard soon after. It was widely reported and believed that this Rey movie would be the first one to get released, and a May 22nd, 2026 release date had been announced last year for it. This past November, Ridley had insinuated that the next Star Wars film to be released theatrically was going to be hers. Things have clearly changed. Not a word about Favreau there, mind you, but if this is accurate, that would be indicative of the normal Kathleen Kennedy mismanagement that Bob Iger should have had it up to here with by now. In fact, WDW Pro suggests that just such a delay may be why The Mandalorian Season 4 is being retrofitted into a movie in this hurried fashion, in order to get some Star Wars movie out in 2026. However, that assumes that the Rey movie will indeed be delayed, and that claim was instantly rubbished by Gizmondo, which wrote, you can take the latest Star Wars rumor and throw it in the Sarlacc pit. Earlier this week, rumors surfaced that the upcoming Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy Star Wars film featuring the return of Daisy Ridley as Rey had been delayed indefinitely. The reason? Creative differences with the film's writer Stephen Knight. Well, that's not true, according to Lucasfilm. A source at the company told IO9 the report is inaccurate and Knight continues to write and be a part of the process. In fact, the company is waiting on his latest draft as you read this. So there you have it. Lucasfilm issued a standard corporate denial by way of Gizmondo's IO9, which praised Kathleen Kennedy for being an underappreciated genius only last week. Countering that though, Fandom Pulse, citing making Star Wars as their source, essentially reiterated much of the same story as was already presented by World of Real. Meanwhile, on X, scooper Jeff Snyder was coy but seemed to imply a Star Wars movie was still due for December of 2026, and that is where matters stand, as of the making of this video. So, what does all of this mean, other than that clearly there is some state of flux going on behind the scenes? The cat in Schrödinger's famous thought experiment existed in a superstate of dead and alive at the same time. Only when the observer opened the box would it be ultimately known if the cat was dead or alive. So too is it with Star Wars these days. For those of us outside the box, which would be the upper echelons of Disney and Lucasfilm in this comparison, Star Wars is right now in a superstate of being dead and alive at the same time, because at this point in time, we cannot conclusively rule out that there is a Jon Favreau path for Star Wars, because at this early stage, it would look just the same as normal Kathleen Kennedy mismanagement and incompetence. But if there are more confirmations of trouble behind the scenes of Rey, and if it suddenly should end up being confirmed to have been pushed back indefinitely, while we continue to hear nothing about the James Mangold movie, then those would be good indications that something big is indeed happening behind the scenes. But on the other hand, if all that is happening is really down to something as mundane as Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger's mismanagement, then at the very least we'll get to document them burning Star Wars to the ground as it happens. As usual, we'll keep you up to date with future developments as we learn more. For now, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. And before you go, remember that to help protect your data and bypass quarrelsome geo-blocking restrictions, you should get Surfshark VPN. Get an exclusive Surfshark deal by entering promo code MIDNIGHT to get up to 6 additional months for free at surfshark.deals/midnight. Link is in the description.